Good afternoon, everybody. We're going to give folks a couple more minutes to trickle on in. We'll be starting momentarily. All right, guys, I'm going to get started just so make sure that we have enough time to cover everything. Welcome. Again, good afternoon to everybody. My name is Rochelle Fajardo. I am the HMIS training coordinator, and today we'll be kind of walking through what will the new HMIS access request process will be. This training is directed towards ATAs and any supervisors that may be supporting users in training. The expectation will be to just so that you are able to guide new users through this process efficiently. But they will be provided some of this instructions as well. But you guys are getting kind of the initial training for it, so we are ready for implementation. For the GoToWebinar setup, the app recently changed, as you may have noticed if you've previously attended some of our webinars. It's now in this app here, but the setup is the same. Non-presenters are muted. There is a questions feature. This is now found at the top right corner of this application. It looks like a chat box with a question mark on it. If you click on it, that's where questions will live. There is also an icon next to it that looks like a file paperclip. That is where there is a handout where you can find what the next steps will be for your own use. This webinar in particular is not intended to address specific client data situations or provider specific situations. So there may be times where I ask folks to just submit a ticket so we can further discuss their specific needs. This webinar will be recorded. This or yesterday's live training will be available for review. The course itself, the content that we're going to be going over is going to be available in the LMS, and I'll share more about what that means later on. Today, we will be walking through, again, the HMIS access training process. So previously, training has been requested and coordinated through the help desk. A lot of this will now be largely living in the LMS to kind of prevent a lot of ticket influx in our ticketing system and to focus on like actual live data in that space. And a lot of it is going to be self-directed. The purpose of this new updated process is just so we can provide you and your users with enough resources so that most corrections and kind of most of the process kind of lives internally and can be done all the way through. So this new process will be similar. So a lot of the components of the process will be the same. This change is just kind of streamlining it, just so we can work on then updating the current training that is here to better fit our needs. So that first step will still be to submit that request. Previously, that was done in, again, tickets and help desk, but now there will be dedicated forms that will collect this information and then we'll process them and provide a follow-up afterwards. Users will also start to receive their training accounts in this first step. The credits are going to be coordinated and documented at this point. Essentially, ATAs will be filling out a form, they'll receive the account, the enrollments, and next steps all in one. So kind of all in one. So we're removing all the steps where users have to complete any other forms in it. So just one all-encompassing form. And I'll talk more about that when we get there. Step 2 is still going to be the LMS courses that are self-paced. The introduction course has stayed the same, but we are now adding a new data management course. This data management course, we'll talk a little bit more about it later, but it will contain just basic informational security training, how to handle PII in general, and then a portion about HMIS in particular. So there will be a module about visibility in general. As you all know, we will be implementing global visibility in our continuum early next year. So this is in anticipation of that. So what visibility is, general guidelines, and how users should be moving through the system, along with the new consent form. So that will live in the data management course, and all new users will be required to take that. And then project-specific courses will stay the same. It is specific to the project type that the user needs to have access to. After the courses, we will still be completing an assignment, rebranding it to the HMIS sample client assignment as opposed to the proctor, just so it is pretty straightforward and obvious what this assignment is. And then again, a lot of that coordination is going to largely live in the LMS now, and I will walk through what that process will look like. But the assignment itself is the same. And finally, after you pass that, they will receive their access. Okay, next. So that's step 1. So we're going an ATA will need to complete a request form based on the user type. There are 4 different kinds of requests that we'll walk through. It'll be the new users, current users, new projects, current user, new agency, and then housing resource specialists. What will all these forms entail? This set of slides will be going through what all the forms will have, even though each form will have its own purpose, but all the forms will have the same requirements and sections to them. And then as a reminder, a current ATA must submit these requests. Confirmation emails will be sent out with a copy of your request, and then just allow us 2 to 3 business days to fulfill your request. But the general hope is that this streamlining process will lessen the time it takes for us to fulfill requests, since the form will completely collect everything we need. So what does the form entail? So the first section will have a requester information, kind of verifying who is requesting this form. And as a reminder, ATAs need to be the one requesting access to the HMIS as the resident HMIS expert. If there is not one currently, because maybe you have a newer agency, some turnovers occurred, we need someone higher up in leadership, a director of sorts, so that they can kind of confirm that this person should be the ATA. They can also request training for other new users at that time, but we cannot take any requests until an ATA is appointed for your provider, for your organization. Case managers, if we receive any requests from them, and this is checked by their role in the HMIS, they cannot submit a request, so they will be sent to next steps to have their ATA resubmit the request. So you want to avoid any delays in kind of the coordination of training internally before having anyone send in requests, and then they kind of get stuck in this loop because the wrong person is sending them. All internal Chicago staff should still submit a help desk. We're still in the process of putting together a process for internal staff. And then the coordinated entry team will be coordinating all 1474 access. So for any new users or current users that will need 1474, all of those requests will need to go through the standard process of requesting approval for that training. And then they will then request the training for your users from us. So to kind of remove that middle ground, any coordinated entry access will just be going through them. Okay. All the forms will also be requesting what agency you are from. This is just to ensure that everyone, all the organizations that will be on the list in the form have completed the APA and have gone through the appropriate process to be on the HMIS and to onboard new users. So if you are not on that list, then you will be directed to submit a ticket and complete those steps first. Then we will add you to the form. Then you can submit a request for new users. There will also be a separate area to accommodate and flag alternate projects. So these are your employment and income projects, and there is a subordinate Street Samaritan project that is just created separate from your agency, so they require a separate account. And then as a reminder, for those types of projects, they need a unique alias email for that new account. All of those will be flagged in the form. At the end of these slides, I'll walk through what the form actually looks like, or what one of them will look like. Access request type. So this is kind of the meat and potatoes of what these forms really are. So each request have a different process. New agency users or brand new users to the system require more review and different pieces rather than someone who is already in the system or have already gone through the process. So make sure that you kind of just know what you've already discussed with your new user, whether they've been in the system or not, to prevent that back and forth. So like it's really best practice that supervisors and ATAs have that conversation and understand the background of the new users coming into the system, just so training doesn't get lost. So this first form is for just, again, those brand new users to your agency. So that is if they've never been in the Chicago HMIS, so Chicago being like our continuum. So if they've used HMIS in other continuums, they are considered a brand new user. Each HMIS, each continuum conducts their HMIS very differently. They might even have a different vendor. So it is very COC specific, each HMIS, so that those folks end up in this category. And folks that were active more than 6 months ago. So if they've had HMIS access before, but it's been more than 6 months, they are again considered a brand new user in our system. These type of users, we do ask that you submit as many of the same access and same project into one request, just so we can kind of bundle all of those people at once. And then once this request is processed, you will receive the enrollments, the new accounts, and next step follow-up with the users and the APA. So users that currently have access that is valid, so that's within 6 months, anywhere in Chicago, a different Chicago agency, or so within the last 6 months. This next form is for them. So for this form, since we have to um, double check with what their old training was completed, that they did have an account in those other agencies, because we have to review all the pieces of what their old access looked like. We ask that for this option, only one user at a time. So some next steps to expect for users that have recent HMIS access is that if they have already completed training at that old organization that matches what they will need in this new agency, then they may bypass at least some of the training. Access to housing and outreach path funded projects will now be separate, no matter what. So whether you're transferring or brand new, it'll just be a separate training in addition to other ones, just because we recognize that those workflows are slightly different than the standard emergency shelter workflow. So now we're hoping to evaluate those a little better. So in the same realm, if they have, if users already have access to entering data at your agency, but now require new project access, there is a form for those agents, for those users. And then again, if they currently have like emergency shelter training and access, and they now need access to housing or outreach path, they will need to complete a sample client assignment and like go through that process. That project access will not just be automatically added. And then the final group of users will be those housing resource specialists. And again, if you select this at any point or you indicate it in the form, the next steps will be directing you to that article where you will need to submit a request for approval for that training. I'm gonna pause here. I've gone through a few steps. Just want to make sure that there's no questions regarding who needs to request, what agencies, and the types of users. All right. Next thing all the forms will request is the learning management system username. So we've been here before. This we ask for the username to ensure that they do have an account in their in the LMS. If they do not have one, meaning that they are brand new to our system and have never had HMIS training or have never taken anything in our LMS, they can create a brand new account. If they do have an existing account, and again, it's really important to have this conversation, before the request happens or submitted, just so there isn't that back and forth. Do not have them make a new account. So make it determine whether they can access that old account and change their email. If they can, then you can just hand us that username. If they cannot and access that account, but they know what their username is, they just can't access that email to reset their password, or maybe they created it under an email that they know they don't have access to anymore, we can update that on the back end. So, but let us do that first before you submit this request. Overall, we just cannot transfer course progress between accounts. So if we enrolled them in a new account and later on you find out they have an old account, we're not transferring that course progress from the old one to the new one or new one to the old one. So make sure, again, coordinate with your new users. Do they have one in the system in any email if they've already completed any training, if you don't want that lost. I see a question here asking if this information will be sent out. A lot of this information, this content, this course will be available to all ATAs and supervisors that attended and will attend LMS training afterwards. So that will, all of these slides will live in the LMS for sure. Parts of it will also live in articles that can be found and linked in those resources next steps file and at the end of these slides. When this is all implemented, we will overly share all of these new articles just so there will still be places for us to reference all of this information. Some of this already lives in an article somewhere, so make sure you guys kind of check out the help desk. A lot of juicy information are in there. Right, so that is the LMS. Invoicing, this is something we've been doing. We've been invoicing folks per request. It is each user in training costs $25 each. Emphasize on users, so that means that providers are only charged once per user, so no matter how many trainings they can or will complete, as long as they have already been invoiced once. The main change in this new process is that now invoicing will happen quarterly rather than per request. And the dates will coincide with data quality, just so it's kind of all at once, easier to keep track of. And they are outlined here, but as I mentioned, when things change and when things pop up, we'll definitely send out reminders that this will happen. But it will now be quarterly. The ATA will receive this the invoice. They are free to forward it to whoever needs to receive it. It will also include a document that includes all the requests that they will be billed for. I see a question and asked, will there be a way to see if an invoice was paid? Right now, there is not a way to see that. There is a way to see all the credits, and we'll work to update that to incorporate this new process. But right now, there isn't. So if there is any invoices you guys have any questions about, please feel free to just submit a ticket. Okay, all right, and then back to the forms. Daniel, hold that question. There is going to be resources later for providers to be able to start keeping track of users in the LMS and like where their learning progress are. So that's one of the incoming resources, but hold that thought. We'll go over more about that a little bit later. I'm just going to finish these set of slides and I'm going to go back to some of these questions that we're receiving. So the next set of questions will be requesting project access. So this is something we're already currently asking for. So this is anything they need to see, edit, report on. So list all of those project names and or project IDs. IDs are really the best bet because sometimes providers have internal names that we don't have access to. So IDs are really the best bet, but you can give us one or both and we can determine next steps there. And then as a reminder, in this space, 1474 access, you need to request approval for it from this article, Housing Resource Specialist. Final section will be kind of breaking down what this user will be responsible for. So previously, what we asked of providers is that you guys pick one of the roles, case manager 1, 2, 3, 4, and the ATA, and then just give us a list of things that the user will be expected to do. In these forms, it will break down what those responsibilities will be now. Just so we can further hope to expand the types of roles that would be available. So we're also just collecting data of like, what are your users doing? Is there users that are only doing this, maybe only doing services, only doing part of the data entry? So it's really important that we really are comprehensive with this. So it will be broken down in 4 categories. That's your data. First category is data entry. That's your standard entering and updating client data, assessment data, services. That will be in this section. Reporting, if they will need to do reports, we need to know what's the scope of the reports that they need to run. Is it just for 1 project, 2 projects, all of the agency projects, maybe across agencies? So what is the scope? And then what types of reports do they need to run those? So we can better understand how to set up their account. Review. This section is what data elements do they only need to see rather than enter that data. So if they need to enter or update any data, then they don't need to just review. So I'll kind of say more about that when I show you guys the sample of what the form looks like. And then admin, this is kind of a catch-all for everything else ATA supervisor related. This should be where new ATAs will be flagged, and then any other responsibilities as an admin will have. So just still kind of gathering information what admin roles folks have internally that are kind of incorporated into HMIS so we can better understand community needs. Go back 2 questions. I see a question here from Sharon regarding a housing navigator. I'm asking that you submit a ticket about your specific user, but essentially all housing navigators have to complete 1474 training. So in our, and then also if they have completed training over 6 months ago, they are a brand new user in our system. And finally, it is really important that you, or as the ATA, is the one coordinating that. So if anything is bouncing back, hopefully your email isn't bouncing back, and then you can kind of coordinate what next steps should be taken. But either way, we need to send a help desk just so we can kind of further understand the specific need. Mario, the user training, we haven't gotten to that part yet. We're still talking about kind of how to request it. So hold that note there. I'm gonna walk through quickly what a form will look like. So some of these pieces will make a little bit more sense. So this is what the new brand new user to your agency form will look like. They all look very similar. At the very top, you're going to have a lot of the same information that I just provided, what this form is for, how many different parts. So you're going to have your verifying requester information, the alternate HMIS section, asking about if it is a separate account, and then all the information about the new users. So here we'll walk through kind of real quickly what these parts will look like. So again, in the beginning, we're verifying who is requesting this. So we'll ask for your email, name, and what agency you are requesting for. This section is for alternate projects. Again, is this a request for one of the following? If not, there is a section at the bottom, a selection at the bottom that says it is not. But again, these specific projects will require a separate email, so make sure that is ready when this request is made. And then the new user information section, the very first question is just asking who invoices should be sent to, just to confirm that. And again, those are going to be done quarterly. Names, how many people, emails, username, pretty straightforward. Project ID. And then this is the user responsibility section that I was talking about. And you're going to be selecting what your user will be doing. For data entry, what items in the client record needs to be entered and modified by the user. So are they doing incidents? Are they doing calls, entering shelters, etc.? If they are not entering any, the last one notes that they are not entering any data. Same thing for reporting, as we mentioned. First, we need to indicate the scope, so one project or more, or not at all. What type of projects, what type of reporting, or not at all. And each of these questions will require an answer, so make sure that we're kind of reading diligently on what each is about. Reviewing data, again, these are view only. So if they are entering or updating any data at all, please do select the last option. And then admin section is text. Next steps are found here. Again, you'll receive a copy and allow us 2 to 3 business days to fulfill requests. So any questions about the request form and what that will look like? Okay. Awesome. I'm going to continue moving forward. So after the request has been processed, they will now complete the actual training courses. So, of course, the user will be completing 3 LMS courses on their own. They are self-paced. They have quizzes, there's videos, there is slides. First one is the introduction to HMIS. This training course contains just foundational information about Chicago COC and basic client record navigation. A new course has been added to this curriculum called data management. It's going to have 2 parts. The first part is basic information security and understanding of how to manage data in general. And then the second part is going to be HMIS specific. HMI specific, meaning we're going to have a section about global visibility, like we mentioned earlier, and how to, what guidelines for using a shared system is, and then a new consent form and how to properly obtain consent and document it into the system. And the last course will be that project specific course. So that's the workflow specific courses that'll walk through what your project actually is required to do. Questions about that? In the implementation, brand new users after this has been implemented will be required to do this new course. So if they we're in the middle of training at all, any new access after this new process has been implemented will require this data management. Current users or users that already have access to the system have completed the training. If this course will be required once they have to do new training. So at any point, if they need new project access, they will need to complete this training. So if they don't, we do recommend everyone completes this because a lot of really good information in there for all users, but the requirement, it will just be up until moving forward after implementation. All right, and then the next step is that next and final step is that sample client assignment, previously called the virtual proctored session. Again, we're just renaming it to make it more simple, but the assignment is the same. For this open book assignment, users will be using the training site to create their own sample client and enter the data we provide correctly. The purpose is to make sure that they can enter the data in the HMIS accurately. In this new process, we will be implementing a wait list for the sample client assignment. The purpose of that is to create transparency on how long this takes and to ensure that there are everyone is able to get to the assignment at some point. Um, there will be 8 users completing the assignment at one time, and they'll just be added on a rolling basis. So when one completes it, we'll add another one, and then there will be a publicized wait list that will be available on an article that again we'll share when all of this goes live. Um, the waitlist will be updated regularly, and the course will automatically expire after 10 days too. So users that don't pass within that period, they will need to re-add themselves to the waitlist, and that means they need to wait again at the end of that line until there is room for them in the course. The number of folks may change in the future, but just starting out, it'll be 8 until we kind of determine how it's looking and what the pace of it feels like. I see a question here about new user requests before the transition period. So once the transition period starts, we are not taking. So we're still taking any new user requests up until that date. I believe it's January 5th will be the cutoff, or January 9th is the cutoff, early January. And there are slides that I will go through about that transition period. So anytime before that, we will still take on new users, and then that transition period will be 2 weeks of trying to get everyone in, or trying to give everyone as much time as possible to complete it before the new process begins. And then I'll talk about what that implementation part looks like. Okay, so next thing. So I see a question here about how long it takes to complete the ATA training. That is a question for the help desk. Let's talk about that later on, but there is an article in the help desk about the ATA training if you'd like to take a look at it. Do please note that this course after implementation will be included in the requirements. So if you have questions about it, send us a ticket. But I suggest to search for the article right now just so we can finish this training. Okay, so the final steps. So after they complete their project-specific course, they're going to be enrolled in a course that essentially is just going to give them instructions on how to sign up for this wait list. And then it also creates a stepping stone that the user has completed the project-specific course. That course is going to be a prerequisite for that assignment. That means they cannot unlock the assignment if they have not completed their project-specific course, even though they can add themselves to the waitlist. So what that looks like is that they will be assigned to this course. Okay. Here we'll be providing kind of instructions on how to sign up for that waitlist. The slides that I show have the same information. So they will be looking for the sample client assignment, requesting access to it, and they'll receive a confirmation email that they have been added to it. And they'll receive another email once they can start it. Their eligibility, so signing up, like I mentioned, does not mean that they can access to it. It does not guarantee access to the assignment. So their requests may still be subject to be declined if they not only haven't completed their project-specific course, if they haven't completed their intro in the last 6 months. As I mentioned, the training expires in 6 months if you have been inactive, so you are considered a brand new user, so they will need to complete that training. If they already have current access, then that requirement is waived. And then again, they must have completed their project-specific course already recently in the last 3 months. I see a question about status emails. What status emails? If you could tell me more what status emails you are referring to, I can better answer that question. Yeah, so that is how we sign up for the assignment. So now that we've gone through this, I would, as a new user, then search. This is how we would do that. We would search for the sample client assignment. Again, you would click on the hand, and this means that the course has been sent to me. The request for it has been sent successfully. Next step, then, after they have received confirmation that they are now off the wait list, they can begin the assignment. So again, this set of information will be available in that assignment, but I'm just going to go over here. So the first part will be going through the instructions, and the process is the same. Sorry. Okay. So the question was the emails that we were just talking about that were sent to new users as they get assigned to the assignment. So no, the users themselves, it's an automated email sent to users by Talent LMS. So unfortunately, we can't really assign ATAs to anybody in the LMS, so we can't really add them to it. But I mentioned earlier, there will be a resource available on the help desk where all the Talent LMS learning progress will be available. So since it is a course, it will show up on that list. I'll talk more about what that looks like towards, oh wait, I can actually show it to you here real quick. The wait lists will look like, I am editing it. The waitlist will look like this on the help desk. So it will look like that, and there will also be. I can't find the article that I am looking for. Oh, this is what we're looking for. So there will be this article that will be available that will have all the users essentially that have been enrolled in a course in the last 90 days. It is very comprehensive, but for right now, we just wanted to provide some information while we figure out a way to disperse this individually to each agency, because it is off of HMIS and it is in the Talent LMS. It's a little difficult to kind of find a way to kind of connect these pieces. But with this new launch of the new process, still wanted something to be available. So this will be available for folks once implementation begins. And again, since the sample assignment and the final steps are a course itself, it will appear on this list. Okay, I hope that answers your question there. Okay, so back to the sample client assignment. So there will be another update in this assignment is that we updated the sample document. So there will be a slide given to the users on how to navigate the sample document. So it's going to look differently. At the very top, we'll have a banner that includes the description of what project type that sample document is going to be for. There'll be instructions on what the steps that we'll be taking. And each of those tasks are going to be broken apart into a larger table that will provide a majority of the data now, as opposed to just kind of pieces of the data. And a brief overview of the assignment. There's going to be a table key that explains extra guidance or tips on how to enter there or what is required in that step. After I go through these slides, I'll go through kind of what it will look like in the LMS again. Folks will be receiving feedback a little differently as well. It'll be sent out through email. And since there are only 8 users doing the training at once, they should expect to receive at least 1 feedback per day if they're submitting multiple times. And it will be sent via email. ATAs will receive a summary of this email, and it will look like this. It'll look like a summary of each section and whether they completed it or what was wrong with it. Users themselves are going to receive more of their score, and they can see a more detailed version of the feedback that we provide. The feedback's going to look like a Google form now, and it's going to provide extra links for resources on how to update it. The guidelines that I usually and the instructions I usually provide in the help desk tickets, some screenshots, and then really an outline of each item. What was completed is and is correct is green, and what is wrong and needs to be corrected will be in red. So it's going to be a lot more comprehensive of a feedback, and I'll share what that will look like in a second. There'll be a section kind of understanding this feedback. So as I mentioned, the green areas are completed correctly and does not need to be changed. So those will be notes like completed incorrect, or not applicable because some data elements are not required for certain projects or questions. Or no update needed. So as a reminder, sub-assessments only document changes. So if no updated was added and that was done correctly, then no update needed is correct. And then anything in red will depend on the question. We'll see a variety of like missing, incomplete, not accurate either to the sample documents, so you're not putting in what the data we provide. It's at the wrong point in time, so maybe it is data from the interim and you're entering it in the entry. Conditional logic, so that's your if yes, if no questions that are in the assessment. Not accurate to the provider. Maybe you are selecting your level 2 provider, even though it should be the actual project in the enrollment. Or not accurate to the project type. So again, some data elements are specific to a project type. And then finally, for sub-assessments, a duplicate is an error. So that is just extra entries entered even though no change occurred. 2 errors that will cause an automatic stop of the review is that if they are incorrectly or incompletely setting up an enrollment or assessment, so that is wrong provider, wrong dates, wrong types. Review ends and we send them back to you. So that is kind of really very much bones and skeleton of how to enter data in the HMIS. So very important that that is corrected right away. And using EDA mode. No one should be using EDA mode outside of 1474 or Housing Resource Specialists, or if we've previously discussed it with you, which is usually going to be our HOPWA folks. So, and I think some RAI will be using EDA, but general public should not be using it. Resources that will be available. Again, the LMS training courses are available once you complete. You can always go back to them. They will be always available to you. Similarly, the help desk, usually a lot of training content lives in the help desk as an article in some shape or form. their ATA, as the resident HMIS expert, it's really important that we have the support of the ATAs to support the new users. It is really difficult. We understand how difficult this may be to navigate for a new user, and our team just doesn't really have the capacity to direct all the new users. So we really need the ATAs to kind of be that pillar at their provider so they can direct them and prevent confusion. And then finally, they can also use an updated HMIS sample client recording. So I will be updating the current video that is in the article when all of that is implemented to incorporate the new document and the new feedback and all of this good stuff that we are now adding on. If all above fails, you can meet with us. We'll be incorporating a weekly office hour and an available booking form for 30-minute meetings for one-on-one users, but both are only going to be available to the 8 users that are currently going to be in the assignment. Haven't quite fully figured out the full logistics of that. It's going to be some part of that confirmation email probably, but those if you are not in the assignment, these meetings will not be available to you. And finally, once they have completed some corrections, you would resubmit in the same place to edit your answer. Again, it's important that they are looked through before resubmitting because they have 10 days and 3 attempts before they lose access to the assignment and go to the end of the line. These restrictions are really important. I know they maybe a lot at first, but it does allow users in training and encourage them to complete the assignment in a timely manner. And folks in the waitlist are able to have reasonable, verifiable expectations on when they can begin their assignment, and providers can kind of plan accordingly. But at the same time, like our team is able to manage and determine who's still in training or not, which is normally quite difficult since it has been self-paced up until now. So let's look at what this will look like live. So that assignment on the HMIS, on the LMS, will look like this. So we walked through how to navigate the sample document. So as you can see, this is going to be part of that assignment in the LMS, so they will have the same information you do. What the sample documents will look like is this. So this is permanent supportive housing at the very top. It notes that. It is also in the title. Going through the same information, the same instructions. These are the 4 main areas that need to be tasks that need to be completed, and a table key. So you guys, step 1, you're going to create a new client record, including their household and ROI. The yellow usually indicates like what tab you're in or what assessment you're in. So here we're grading a client, so we need to be in the clients module to do that. So we're not really giving you all the instructions at once because obviously you should have already completed the training, but just a little bit more guidance through each task in the assignment as previously available. So you got your households, client profile information, release of information, and then step 2, you would then enroll them. And again, a few reminders here and there. So that is what those will look like. They will also receive that information about how the feedback looks. So actually the feedback, let's take a look at what that looks like. So ATAs will see this. So they'll see the name of the user, their sample client has been received, how many attempts, whether they passed or not, and then like each section is a brief summary of each item. Users themselves will receive something that looks like this. And then at the very bottom, they will have a link to review their score. So this is their information, and then again, the same information again. I know we're overloading everybody with information, but the goal is self-sufficiency and hopefully directs people to the right place. Client profile, again, like we're going to have links that are related that hopefully will help you and your user navigate what needs to be corrected and how to correct it. We got our household here. It's incomplete. So I would then go back and look at my record and see what's incomplete about it. Make sure all questions are completed. And then, yeah, so that's how each section looks. Again, article links, ROIs. Once they do pass, they do still receive this. And then in addition, another email that coming from us with their live credentials. That is the final step. So once they complete that task, they'll be provided access. Again, access to housing outreach and path funded will require separate training meaning the project specific course and a separate sample client assignment. Access to 1474 is also separate training and is coordinated by the coordinated entry team, so you have to register for approval. Housing system navigation also needs 1474 training, but we will do the enrollment for the housing system navigation course, so you could still request that, but I will also provide instructions that like make sure that you do housing resource specialist training. And then finally, inactive users that have not logged on in the last 6 months will need to complete all the training over again. Okay, so implementation. So what this will look like is that we are currently in step 1. So today is the 18th. We had a live webinar yesterday, and today all ATAs are required to attend either one of these 2 trainings. And if you weren't able to attend yesterday and today, this course will be available in the LMS tomorrow. Everyone who did attend will also have this course available to them, but it will be manually completed, so you don't need to retake it. It'll just be available for you for review. So folks that haven't completed or attended will have until January 5th to complete this training. Otherwise, some access may be lost. Then starting January 9th, this is that beginning of the 2-week period. So that is any training requests that we receive after January 9th will be rejected. We are not taking new onboarding users at this period of time. So that gives us time for existing users to complete the training before implementation. So that ends the 23rd, which is a Friday. Obviously, they may still have over the weekend. Step 3 is implementation, January 26th. Implementation will be about midday. So since I do recognize that I ended it on a weekend, just to give people an extra little buffer if they do need to complete a correction of sorts over the weekend, be spending January 26th morning seeing if there's any stragglers, and we'll let them through. Otherwise, midday, January 26th, we are clearing out the training site. So all the clients will be removed. Some licenses will need to be re-added. So any users still in training and have not passed will need a new request submitted. Now we recognize for some of those people will already have done some of the steps, and we'll provide steps for those folks accordingly, so they would be able to still pick up where they left off. They would essentially will need to complete the data management course, and then they would need to add themselves to the wait list so that they can pick up where they left off in the assignment. And then the last slide is resources. Again, most of these, the last three are not live to the public yet, but will be. Just so I included in here just so you have it right now. But again, once we go through each step and each stage, there'll be plenty of communication. So make sure you look out for emails from us about what is coming up and what steps are coming up. And that is all for today. I do want to note that time ended, the allotted time for this training ended a minute ago. So totally okay if everyone is leaving, but I will stay on for an extra few minutes to answer any questions anybody might have about the general process. If you have anything specific, please do feel free to submit a ticket and we'll answer those questions. And I just want to thank everybody for coming to this training. And if you're still here, happy holidays, and we'll talk soon. Have a good one. Thanks, Venus. Have a good one.